Reunion. My name is Andrew Gosen. I am on staff in Alumni Affairs as the Senior Director for Social Media Strategy, and I'm incredibly excited to introduce this session. There are two main reasons for that. First of these is that for a long time, as we've talked about the use of social media in working with alumni communities, we've talked about the potential that's out there, but we haven't gotten to the point where we can talk about actual deployments of the social tools, how well it worked, and what we've learned from those deployments. And I think we finally reached a tipping point as far as that goes, because today we're actually going to hear about two examples of full deployment of social tools in the promotion of reunions. And I think just for all of us, that's a pretty exciting milestone to pass by. The second reason that I'm excited about the session is because of our two panelists. We've got here with us two class volunteers who can not only talk the social media talk, but they have walked the walk. About 45 minutes from now, you're going to get a sense of how comprehensively they have walked the walk and the impact that's had on their respective reunions. First, you're going to hear from Scott Pesner talking about the class of '87's experience. Scott's list of Cornell volunteer activities is so long that if I got started, I wouldn't fully stop until an hour. His sort of rooster tail of ribbons is much shorter this year than it has been in the past, I think because he's worried about his posture. But that's a good thing to be worried about if you saw his list last year. Scott's been involved with Big Red Band. He's been involved with his class. He's an alumni relations professional working at Columbia University. He gets how these tools work from the staff side and from the volunteer side, and it's a pleasure to have him talking to you all today. Shane Dunn's profile is actually very similar to Scott's. Long and distinguished service to Cornell in context ranging from the class of '07 to the Cornell Club of Boston, but he's also an alumni relations pro working with Sloan alumni at MIT. Once again, he has both the staff and the volunteer perspective, and I can't think of two better people to walk you through really innovative and interesting deployments of social technology to promote Cornell reunions. So please join me in welcoming our panelists.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks to you and to Keith and other colleagues at Alumni Affairs for helping Scott and me make this what we want it to be, and that's a really exciting volunteer experience. This isn't just about tools, but it's also about an experience, right? That's why we're out here this weekend. Before I hand it over to Scott, actually, I just want to set some ground rules and also talk about what this session is and isn't. Also, I'm currently serving as my class president, but I was my class reunion chair and registration chair during my 5-year reunion that just ended, and Scott is pretty much the same in many capacities. So I just want to let everyone here know that we're just going to provide numerous examples of what we as a class, as two classes, did to promote our reunion, both before, during, and after, through social media. By no means is this everything. This is not a textbook necessarily, nor is any part of social media. There are no experts in this room, I don't think. Social media is ever evolving, like all communication media and technologies. So we're going to provide tips, lessons learned, as well as kind of our philosophies on using social, which again, people can take or they can adapt to, or they can just kind of start from scratch and figure out what works for them, of course. Please interrupt us at any time. The last session, which we just had, the people were interrupting the whole time, which is great. So you're more than welcome to throw up your hand or just interrupt us. I don't think my pride will be hurt if you just want to talk or disagree even. And then finally, just if you're on Twitter, please feel free to tweet. Cornell CALC is the official hashtag for the conference. So please feel free to do that. We will not be offended as well if you are tweeting and using your phone during this. First question I actually want to ask before handing over to Scott is, who individually is on Facebook? How's the profile? Okay. Whose class has a Facebook page or group? Okay. So who personally is on Twitter? A few? Okay. And then finally, who has a class Twitter account that you know of? 3. Okay. That just helps us gauge who's in the room. And also, the other thing I just want to mention is we know some of the things we say maybe will not make sense to anyone. Maybe some terms we're using or definitions, whatever it is. That's completely understandable and fine. We're going to kind of go through this a little bit. But if anyone, again, wants to interrupt us and say, what does that mean, we'll do our best to answer it. While also, again, saying we don't have every single answer, of course, but we want to make sure we're being receptive to everyone in the room and accommodating everyone's experience with all this. So without further ado, here's Scott. So thank you.
On behalf of MIT and Columbia, we'd like to thank Cornell for inviting us.
This is Professional Development Day. It's great.
We're colleagues. Anyway, I've been involved in reunions since my 10th, back what I call the Stone Age. And what I'm actually going to talk about is how social media is just another part of your toolkit that has come along to really help you. So the toolkit, The Way We Were, is The Way We Were, because it is a Cornell reference, screenplay by Arthur Lawrence, class of 1937. In the old days, we were able to communicate about reunion to our classmates through writing letters and through the phone. By the way, that's something called a rotary phone. Took a little while to dial. And then the toolkit got a little bigger. By the time of my 10th reunion, we added one more element to the toolkit. We added the World Wide Web. And by the mid-90s, class websites began to take shape. I started my class website. I brought this up at the first session. For those of you who remember building the websites in the mid-90s for the class, and you talked to a student named Josh Steiner, who worked in Alumni Affairs, who is actually now the class reunion chair for 97, is down doing the reunion workshop, working with the reunion chairs down there. So I just think it's humorous that Josh is still working on reunion. And then by my 15th reunion, we now had a robust database of email addresses. So there was much more ways we could communicate to our classmates. And what I actually did for our 15th reunion, we had about maybe 300 email addresses of our classmates. It sounds like nothing now. This is going back to 2002. But what I did was 6 weeks prior to reunion, I sent out an email myself, thematic, 3 different emails that were thematic. One was why you should bring your family to reunion. This is my 15th. The food we're going to serve for the second email, because people love to eat, and because people come to reunion for 2 reasons: to see their classmates and to be re-engaged with Cornell. The third email is about the new buildings that have gone up on campus and what has changed. And that really actually excited the most people. And for the past 2 reunions, our 20th, 25th, I've sent out that same email with an update on the buildings that have changed, and it really excited people because they felt, wow, I really have to come back and see the campus. By my 20th, we figured out new ways to use email better. More classmate email addresses were more ways to target. Now let's work with our affinity groups. So I created a templated email that I sent to, I found leaders from sororities, fraternities, and some affinities, and I said, hey, I just need you to send out this email and get your cohort to come. And it was an easy thing to do. I did ask them if you can arrange a Saturday lunch for your cohort, because we weren't planning Saturday lunch for our classes. We figured now is the time to spend the time with your friends that you'll really engage with. It took pressure off the reunion chairs like me to plan another event, but it was also, again, people come to reunion because they want to see their friends. And this is a way for their friends to come together in a way that would make it easy for them to be engaged. 2004, 2005, Facebook came along. I discovered if you remember when Facebook came along, and Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook at Harvard, and then he allowed the other Ivy League schools to come on board. You needed an Ivy League email address. Guess what? Cornell alumni have email addresses. So I was able to sign on Facebook and figure out, oh, this is a great marketing tool. And I created the class of 1987 Facebook group, but discovered there were very few members of the class of 1987 on Facebook at the time. So I actually created a group called Society for 20th Century Cornellians. So I could get anyone who graduated before 1999 on Facebook. And it was actually a picture of the U-Hauls being torn down. U-Hauls for the University Halls on West Campus.
I lived in 2 of them.
Okay, just want to make sure. And that group still exists. The class of 1987 Facebook group we still use. So by this time, by my 20th, this is 2007, we had the web. We had email addresses. We had a lot of email addresses. We had Facebook, and we had phones. This time, they were digital. 2012, the toolkit gets much bigger. We have Twitter. We asked how many people have Twitter accounts. How many of you have LinkedIn accounts? I found LinkedIn was more professional, more for a professional reason. So we don't have a class of 1987 LinkedIn group. I just don't see. I think it's a little different purpose. There are photo sites like Flickr and others similar to that, and there's a whole lot more. So My personal philosophy is choose the ones that best fit your needs, and what is the most effective tool, and which will be one that I'm more comfortable with. Whatever your age, whatever you're knowledgeable with, pick the ones that work best and are going to most effectively reach your classmates. So I elected to focus on Facebook, but I also used email and the web and a few other things. So the 1987 Facebook page. I focused on the Facebook page, though we did have the group, and people did join the group because they were confused which is a group, which is a page, and I answered questions in both because I'm the administrator for both. We promoted liking the class Facebook page through all communications. The class columns always feature the URL. By the way, on Facebook, name your Facebook page. It's easy to do. Ours is www.facebook.com/Cornell1987. So make sure you put Cornell 1989, 1988. It's very easy to do. And make sure you feature it in all your reunion mailings as well. And then the mission of the page was to get people excited about reunion, get them to tell others about it by sharing the information, and promote and answer questions about reunion. It's a great place to give instantaneous answers. My attitude is begin early. My brother and sister are a class of 1985, so I'm a third wheel. I go up with them to their reunion because I'm a reunion planner. I'm planning 2 years ahead. But I took photos. So I started with a reunion in 2010, took photos, and began to post it on our Facebook page and say, here's the class of 1985 at their reunion. Our reunion is 2 years from now. Here are the dates. Same thing. Who are reunion chairs for the coming? Who are the 4 and 9 reunion chairs are in here? Take your camera with you to reunion in June because you're going to go, and see if you can be. If you're not an administrator of the Facebook page, see if you can, so you can instantly take it on your iPhone and post it right away. And then once our KO reunion kickoff weekend comes, take photos there of your classmates planning reunion, and then when you come to CALC, make sure you post those as well. So for example, here's the photo from 1985 reunion that I posted on Facebook, and all our classmates were so excited they saw their friends that were 2 years older than them, and they were identifying, oh, here's so-and-so next to so-and-so. That's my co-reunion chair, Melissa Friedenberg, that's our reunion 2011. She's in love with Touchdown the Bear, and she knocked the kids out of the way to take the photo. And then that's me and Melissa all the way at the bottom at reunion kickoff weekend in September of 2011. And we announced to our class that our reunion headquarters was Hans Beta House, again for the second time. And people got excited about that. Okay, so after CALC weekend, now's the time to start really focusing on your social media. My attitude is post 2 to 3 times a week. On Facebook, don't overdo it. People get annoyed if they see a post from you every day, every hour. Do it 2 to 3 times a week. Keep the post short, tie it to your Twitter account if you're not. It's easy to create a Twitter account and just link the two. In case you have audiences that are separate, keep your voice. I try to have a sense of humor and be funny. People appreciate it. People don't want to hear, you have to register for reunion now. Keep it funny. Hey, guess what? This is my second to last reunion. This is my second to last message to you for tomorrow that the early bird is going away. Post at the start of the day. I find people tend to look at their Facebooks when they get in the morning. They browse their Facebook. The other thing I was told, my boss used to be Andrew's counterpart. My boss at Columbia was Andrew's counterpart at Columbia before she became my boss. She told me the best time to post on Facebook is on Saturdays, because Saturdays Facebook is quiet and your stuff will stick out. Then again, I have to remember that on Saturdays I have to think about posting on Facebook. Make people want to share your posts. Facebook can be viral for you. Make people want to hit that share button and be able to send it out. And I like to clarify this because it can be misconstrued. When I say don't share from other Cornell websites, be original, take the content, but don't hit the share button from the Cornell Alumni Association and put it on your page. Take the content and post it on your page. The Cornell Alumni Association is sharing that content for you to be able to repost it. Or things like that. If there's a video that Cornell puts out promoting reunion, grab the URL and post it as your own. Otherwise, it's going to say Cornell Alumni Association and the class of 1987 shared this video. Well, you're not getting any. You're not being individual. You get the publicity for your own class, so people will be excited, and post things that people will share. So some of the ideas for posts are frequently asked questions. We got this question about early bird. I can't decide if I'm bringing the kids or not. We kept on getting this question a lot. It wasn't just one question, one person, what can I do? So we answered the question on Facebook. Remind people to register. We were fortunate to remember Big Red, the bird, the hawk that was hatching. I played more puns off the fact that the early bird was ending and the eggs were hatching with the early bird. That It was a creative way to do it. And I said actually it was also a great thing. Hey, did you hear about Big Red and the live cam with the eggs? And it was a great way actually to get people involved. Landmarks. We just registered our 100th classmate. You have 1 more month to take advantage of early bird savings. We like to take notice of dates and don't want to sound like a credit card commercial, but then again, reunion is priceless. Make your classmates feel they have a stake in the reunion planning. We asked our classmates, we were having an 80s dance party, what songs would you like the DJ to play? And you can see 24 people responded to that one post, which is great. By the way, the Facebook administrators can actually see on their page, will tell you how many people viewed the post. So we saw 341 people actually viewed the post, which is great. Granted, it's not only your classmates, but it's other people. The only advice I have is don't crowdsource things you can't come through with. When I say crowdsource, don't ask for people's opinions to make a decision. Some classes will actually say, what souvenir should we get for a reunion? As a reunion chair, I don't want people telling me what souvenirs to get for a reunion. It's too much to be able to take in, and it's too much to actually be able to come through with. Or don't say, what food should we serve for dinner? You don't want to do that. Things you can come through with, or things if you don't come through with, no one will really notice. Celebrate landmark times. Make sure you, when the commencement video comes out a week before or 2 weeks before reunion, post that. And say, hey, remember 25 years ago, we were commencement. The Cornell Alumni Association actually posted photos from senior week. So I made sure to post those, reuse it. Show photos from your previous reunion. And look, Whitney Watson-Goodman actually posted them. As
she often does.
I am somewhere there with hair. But then again, they knew me with hair, so that's okay. But it's actually a great way to use it. Share other Facebook groups. This is one of my favorites. One of our classmates decided to create his own Facebook group. It's Cornellians trying to lose weight before their June 2010. So, by the way, if you're a reunion chef and coming here, get together. All of you create the group and share that. I think it's a great idea for a group. It was actually a very funny group.
Yeah.
Other things we did, we asked our classmates the week prior to reunion to change their profile photo to our reunion logo, and a lot of classmates did. Some classmates still haven't changed it back. But I did explain the process, actually. I said, here's how you actually change the photo, because some people still have to question the empty head on their Facebook page. And we changed our cover photo to our reunion slogan. We actually branded our reunion with the slogan, one special class, one special weekend. So all our marketing materials actually said that, and that was the header going into reunion on the cover photo when you look at our Facebook page. Get people excited the week of reunion. We started posting photos as we were up there. Because you're up early. The chairs are up there early, and that's, by the way, it's a great store in Ithaca called the Main Source. That's a restaurant supply store, which we had a ball going to that store. And
Supermarket suite.
Yeah, it does look like a lot. There's a fourth wagon actually too. And then we put up a banner outside our headquarters with one special class, one special weekend to get excited. During reunion, make sure you're posting photos. Then our website. We still use our class website to generate excitement, provide links to useful information, give attendance updates, answer frequently asked questions because it's a little more fluid on Facebook and may not be able to be seen, and remind classmates about the class campaign. You really don't want to, a lot of classes don't ask for money on the Facebook page, but you can do it on your website, so it's a great way to do it. Emails. The summer before reunion, what we decided to do was we polled the classmates that attended at least 3 of our 4 prior reunions and asked them through email and an online survey to complete a survey and give us feedback. So they felt more engaged in the reunion planning. It worked out really well, and actually gave us some great feedback that we used. Customized emails for affinity groups. I went a little even further than I did the last time. I did analysis of affinity groups that never show up, and I emailed them personally and said, "Hey, ex-fraternity members, you've never come to reunion. Why don't you all come?" So that was a way of using the affinity email addresses a little differently. Again, I used those same emails that I did the past 2 years previous with family-oriented, what's changed about Cornell, all the food and other activities. And finally, the week before reunion, I sent out an email to everybody who lived within a 100-mile radius. For those of you who are familiar with the affinity spreadsheets you get, there's a column that says what region you're from. So if you say New York, Ontario, that's usually about a 100-mile radius. The week before reunion, I said, hey, if you're not, and I checked to see who hadn't signed up for reunion yet. I sent them an email and said, hey, if you haven't signed up for reunion and you just feel like coming for Saturday dinner, let us know. We'll make a special price for you if you just want to drive in and drive out that day. And several people took us up on that offer. So it was a great way to segment your email list. We also created a photo site. Well, one of our reunion souvenirs was a photo frame with information on a URL to Photobucket. And that's just a Saturday night dinner, not Friday night dinner. We had a photographer at our Saturday night dinner who took photos. We invited on the cover of the photo frame and said, get your affinities together and take group photos. A lot of people did. And then we directed them to the Photobucket site, which is a private site. They needed a password, so the password information was there. And then once the Photobucket photos were uploaded, we then posted a photo a day on our Facebook page to get people to go to the Photobucket site. And it worked out really well. What people said was, when they saw some of the photos, was like, I didn't know so-and-so was at reunion, and I never saw them. So the photographers were able to actually capture people that people never actually saw, so they were able to see people. The one advice I actually will do for next reunion is, at all our major events, have a photographer, spend the money. That way people don't have to worry about taking their own photos. There'll be someone there, and they'll capture things that you may not have been able to capture. I think it's worth the investment. Post-reunion, again, posted a photo day on the Photobucket website, posted the class photo, scanned it when it was ready, posted links to articles and blogs about reunion, everything that Cornell posts afterward, like the Cornell Yana Night video. And I changed the cover photo on our Facebook page to reflect reunion. That is still our cover page. For our 30th rather, I try to go back in time and forward, consider a better use of Twitter. Find someone to create viral videos. I just didn't have the time, being a reunion chair, to be able to start working on video. On the photo site where classmates can actually upload their photos. The only problem with that is you have to depend on the fact that classmates are actually going to do that. And then I'm sure there's something new that's going to be added to the toolkit that's not invented yet, that we're going to start playing with. So just the years going forward, there's going to be more. We started with that the quill and paper, and now we're at quill, yeah. And now look where we are, and rotary phone. With that, I will turn it over to Shane. Oh wait, question. But thanks for the applause. You want to applaud it?
Scott, you said something before. You said a lot of it. Naming your Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm an administrator of my class's Facebook page, but is it named by default?
It gives you it just gives you a long code. This way you can actually give it a customized name.
There's a setting you need to do in the profile. Like if you're going to change your settings in the profile, you can change your URL. I did that for my class actually. You can go through it.
Maybe just show me how to do that.
Yeah, but it's really effective.
I don't think I did that. So.
Okay. Yeah, you can do it. As long as no one else has stolen it.
Yes, you can have multiple pages of the same name. We found out. My wife's class, she won in Cornell class in 1973, and it already existed.
Someone else took it.
But there was nobody on it, so whatever.
Anyone else?
I'll turn it to Shane. Oh, question, Lisa.
What do you think about Twitter? I mean, you said better use of Twitter?
Well, I didn't.
What's the new
honestly,
thing?
Yeah, I felt that my classmates weren't on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Just from knowing my classmates, I couldn't find them. There was a class Twitter account that just links to the Facebook page, and I think I was proven right when on the registration form now it actually asks if you have a Twitter account, please list it, and very good classmates listed a Twitter account.
Mm-hmm.
But I think going in the future they will do it, and Twitter and Shane will actually address it because they actually customize their use of Twitter. So maybe going forward, if I could find someone who actually enjoys tweeting, I would ask them to help out. But I mean, being the reading chair was actually more easy, and Shane would agree with me, because you knew the questions coming in, and you knew where you were in the timeline, so it was easy, mentally to be able to figure out what I have to post on Facebook and the social media to drive attendance, but also answer the questions that are coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Great job. I also talk fast, so I apologize. Slow me down if you definitely want me to.
I'm a New Yorker.
Questions. I'm a New Yorker too, but different city.
Utica is not.
New
York.
I forgot to say, yeah.
I'm gonna go with the
So thanks, Scott. So we're gonna move again from the 25th to the 5th. I just had my first kind of big Cornell reunion. It was a wonderful experience, and I know all of you in the room who've gone to yours will hopefully agree with that. It was just amazing. So I wanted to start by echoing a lot of what Scott said, pretty much everything he said I don't need to continue to say. from use of class website. Redundancies are good, actually, as well as continuing to use a lot of different unique content is very important, etc. One thing I want to point out that's unique for my class this year, and future classes doing the 5th at least, we are a close to digital native population. My class in 2007. Facebook actually started my freshman/sophomore year of college, so we had a lot of experience with it, exposure. We were actually using it when it was only open to college students, starting with the Ivies and then moving beyond that. So we had a kind of closed community, and then it opened up, and that's fine, in my opinion. But just to kind of put it into reference and context that we kind of at least had a unique experience, whereas not everyone, every class will use it the same way we did, for example. Just want to point like kind of our social strategy here. We use Facebook, we did use Twitter, we think about sharing emails with everyone, word of mouth, also our class website, which I forgot to add in here, which I learned from the last session, something to continue to reinforce, which I agree with. That's our social strategy. It's not one tool, it's multiple tools. And it is a lot of work for some people, but you kind of have to find out what does work for your class or what you're willing to take a risk on or investing time in, just to remember it. And then social will not replace normal communication, in my opinion. I think we have a long way to go before we stop caring about communicating with one another via the phone or face-to-face or through events, etc. This is just a way of enhancing and exploiting it. Something that's already good, and nothing will ever replace your Cornell experience either. So that will continue for the foreseeable future happen in a face-to-face environment. So just remember that. This is just a tool, not an actual replacement. So I want to start actually, I talked to some other people about this last session as well, but our class actually struggled between the difference between a Facebook group and a page and what we should use. So there are two ways to build community on Facebook, technically, at least in the aggregate. The first is a group, which is more a private community if you want it to. The second is a page, which is a little more public, more building your brand. It does have a public URL. We actually, as a class, originally had a group, but we decided to go with both. Not every class can or should do that. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. We were fortunate enough to leverage both to build community on both. We started, obviously very early stages with our Facebook page, our group from when we were on campus, so it was kind of easy to grow that and kind of reinvigorate it before reunion. It's up to 1,000 members now. Whereas our page started from scratch. It took us a long time to build to what it is today, which is about 240 people or likes. So it's different. And again, I'm happy to go through nuances of that a little bit later, but I just want to mention like a lot of people are confused or just don't know which one they should do. You can do both, or you can do one. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. And some of it does have to do with privacy. That came up a lot in the previous session, just to make everyone aware. So Scott touched on repurposing content in specific ways earlier. I agree with him that maybe it's not always best to share just from the Alumni Association page. You can, maybe not all the time. We repurposed the Save the Date reunion video that Cornell produced, which I thought was outstanding, and it kind of starts building this awareness of reunion early on. This was in February, 4 or 5 months before our reunion. It's just a really great way to get people really excited, of course. So the university has a lot of great resources, we know. Use it. You don't always have to create your own content if you can't. Also, we shared our class, senior class campaign video when we were raising money for the annual fund when we were seniors. So that was kind of a fun way of starting to get people thinking about the reunion gift, we thought. So just again, repurposing both new content that's just coming out, or look back in your archives, if you will, of what has been produced if you have anything. Scott talked about using old pictures. I mean, that's the same thing. Content is always alive, in my opinion, in many respects.
How would you do that? Like, how would you find old videos or old?
So for us, the campaign video, I just looked on YouTube.
Okay.
I mean, YouTube is the way I would do it currently. There might be other ways that other people have experience with, or it's in an archive somewhere, but it's not on YouTube. I think that, again, more of a case by case, but I really just Googled through YouTube looking for class of 2007 campaign video because I knew we had one. So if you think something's out there, it's likely on YouTube. I should be honest too, it's likely out there. So Scott touched on this too. We spent a lot of time, daily registration updates almost. We really, as soon as the registration kicked off, we really started to push that and show everyone that people are coming. It's really exciting. After 8 hours of registration, we had 75 people sign up. After like a day, it was 119. So we're continuing to grow, which is really exciting, and it kind of builds that energy around reunion, and that people should be starting to register. I should also point out that we're driving people to our class site. Again, we're not replacing our class website here. We're not replacing Cornell's websites. It's just really important to realize there are many different ways that you can drive people to a lot of different information. They're just different ways of presenting it, is what these social strategies kind of tell us or teach us. So don't forget about your class site and drive people there through your social means. Share university reunion updates. We pretty much told people over 3,000 people are now registered for reunion across all the reunion classes, and for someone, this was my first reunion. It's really exciting to know that obviously there are people from across generations and classes there, and it's bigger than just you and your class, which is really odd. You don't get very many opportunities. We're fortunate here as alumni leaders to come to CALC or previously to CACO and other events, but most of our classmates don't get these opportunities to interact with other Cornellians. So I think it's really important to recognize that you're bigger. Cornell is much bigger than just one class, of course. And it also reminding people, hey, the early bird deadline's coming up, so couch it in something else as well. Same thing, over 500 events coming up at reunion, are you registered, all that, driving people back to register. Apply social pressure, I think this is really powerful. I know it is for my friends and me and a lot of my classmates. Who's missing from this list? Drive people to that See Who's Coming list or the registration page that Cornell provides for you through your registration site and say, hey, why isn't your name up here? It really just kind of starts pushing people to act, which is ultimately the goal. You're using this to lead to an action. Kind of normal marketing practice as well, not just for reading. Then you get to the countdown, which is really exciting and invigorating, and for those of us working in the back of it all, we all know how much work went into it. But now you really get people really excited about coming back to campus. We said here, who else is excited when you say see you next weekend? It means see you back on campus, which I think is a really fun way of getting people nostalgic. And then as I write this, it's exactly to the minute 7 days until our 5-year reunion registration opens up. And then be on the lookout for an email with a lot more info. So it's also saying, hey, be on the lookout. Something else is coming. You can't miss it. And that's through email again. So we're not trying to replace another medium. We're trying to reinforce it and then continue to drive people to different areas. So it's good practice. With 2 days to go, our official reunion registration count is up to 708. We're close to a record. We're reunion record. It's time to be broken. So it's building that energy. It's getting those last minute stragglers to actually register because they're going to be part of something that could be huge. Reunion arrives. Scott talked about this as well. We made sure we took a picture of our class headquarters, posted on Facebook for people who are either coming on the road or they just weren't able to come, but they're starting to realize they can be part of reunion without being present. And that's the nice thing about social media as well is, it's still nothing like being face-to-face, but if you're around the world, as many of our classmates are, and you can't actually make it back, at least you can feel like you're part of something, which I think is a really great thing that social media allows you to do. This was our first registrant, Corey Earl, class of 07. I'm sure many people know it. He was actually, ironically or coincidentally, whichever one it is, the first person to actually check in at reunion, so we posted that.
He was waiting for the doors to open.
He actually wasn't just waiting, which is funny. He just kind of happened to saunter in, and he was there. So again, 07 is open for business. We're all here. We're ready to welcome everyone. And then this is me and my fellow reunion co-chairs, and again, just a way of saying we were happy to help contribute to this big thing. We want you to kind of know people are behind this, and it's just really important for people to be able to recognize kind of what goes into this, in my opinion. I think you all can agree with that if you've taken on this big task of planning a reunion. The final day, full day of reunion is here. Our class is nearing a couple of impressive attendance records, which we'll talk about. If you're around, stop by. That was a way of saying if you're in the, Cornell helped us, if you're in the area but you're not actually in reunion, just come. We'll figure out a way because we want to count you. When it comes to records and things like that, I think we get competitive and excited. So this is a way of building that broader community outside of who's actually in that space of being at reunion at the time. Also, kind of gearing up for something happening later on, which is something social helps you do. Some big news about the class of 07 will be announced a little bit later in Cornelliana night. It serves two purposes, in my opinion. It tells people who are Cornell class of 07 to actually go to Cornelliana night, which not everyone might do, but then they're going to say that this is something important to my class. And then for the 5th reunion, that can be a challenge sometimes, of what Saturday night brings, of course. And then the second is for people who weren't actually at reunion. Cornelliana night was live streamed this year, so people could watch it around the world. I didn't include that link. Maybe that was my fault, but it's just another point for people who weren't there to check out what is Cornelliana night. It's really important. This is at Cornelliana night. It was announced by Rob Rosenberg of CACO, broke the 5th year reunion record. So again, bringing people into this community of, this was a really impressive reunion experience. We wanted just to show this. One other thing that I don't think I've actually mentioned, Scott did and we alluded to it, use pictures text is great and fine, but I think, if I think back a little bit, some things we did wrong. We didn't use enough pictures leading up to reunion, but pictures work a lot. I know in my day job, where I do social media at MIT Sloan, anytime there's a picture, like the likes, whether that's the way you really want to measure it, just go up so much. And we all like looking at faces and nice pictures and Cornell the Gorges and the Clock Tower, etc. So this is actually also a way of saying there's someone there taking this all in, and it's actually really happening. It's not bluster or anything. So we want to also thank people for attending and making this such an unforgettable weekend. Oops. So after reunion, we as reunion chairs thanked everyone on Facebook. I know Scott did some similar things. We wanted to remind everyone this was such an unforgettable weekend. We could not do it without you guys as classmates. On behalf of people who are volunteers like ourselves, I think that's really important to reiterate. Moving on again to after reunion, having reunion withdrawal, the university obviously puts out a bunch of pictures or other types of media. We wanted to send people there whether they were at reunion or not, so it's a good way to continue with that content piece of sharing. And then the same, surveys are really important to having a better reunion next time or for the year after that, so we want to make sure people took the survey that Cornell sends out right after a reunion. So again, you can never go wrong, I think, by sharing that on Facebook or Twitter as well. And then we did have a professional photographer at a couple of our nights, so a couple of our events. So when we got those professional photos back, we made sure we posted on Facebook. People went wild, started tagging themselves, started commenting on things, and that was really great. And then two more quick things. After reunion, one of my classmates actually wrote something in the Huffington Post about how reunion, you can't replace it. We might all live and communicate digitally a lot now, or we live halfway around the world from each other. You can't beat face-to-face reunions. The spirit of it all, the experience that you have, meeting and seeing people you haven't seen in 5, 10, 15, 20 years is really exciting. And the same, a close friend of mine who wrote for the Daily Sun when he was on campus, he wrote an article that was actually in the Reunion Sun edition, the Sun Reunion edition, and we wanted to make sure that he was acknowledged for that, but also because it just spoke to our reunion experience. It's the importance of being alums and coming back and giving back. So again, that piece of content we shared. So I'll touch on Twitter briefly. I know the question came up. Twitter, I think, will continue to emerge. The thing about Twitter, it's obviously very short. 140 characters, you can't do too much with it. But you can say very similar things you're doing on Facebook and Twitter, just making it more concise. But also it's about a conversation. Twitter is about a lot of back and forth. It's not just posting news, pushing out and feeding out. It's a push and pull mechanism, if you will. It's a two-way street. So someone actually asked the class of 2007 Twitter account a question. I don't think I can register yet. Is that true? We responded, that's correct. Registration goes live in late March. Not only did this person who asked that see it, the rest of our followers, and I forget how many we actually do have, frankly, but everyone saw that. So it's another way of posting information to the aggregate, not only one person, which is very important. Someone's really giving feedback, just saying how excited they are that it's been, can't believe it's been 5 years since we were on campus, and we're just saying neither can we. We're kind of building in that community. We're saying we feel the same way. This is something we get excited about. Just some examples of how Twitter actually works in theory. And this is another way, again, use your different channels to feed off of each other and to promote the other. We're making sure people are checking on Facebook because we can post more on Facebook. It's you have more space, more characters you can use, etc. And we just want to make sure we're feeding into each other. So just more uses. We're just telling people again, stay tuned to Facebook. Reunion's coming. Registration is coming soon. Also, after that, it says we would actually say keep an eye on our class website because that's still where we post the most information about reunion. So it's very important to do that. We also had a class breakfast with Susan Murphy a couple months before reunion, which was a wonderful event. But then we were also saying now the next big thing for our class and for us building our identity in our community is to reunion. So feed off those previous events that are happening. Many people do pre-reunion events. Don't forget that also at the end of the day, reunion is still your goal. I think in some capacity for your reunion year. So use that as a stepping off point. 3 weeks from today, reunion will be over, but we have to get through 3 days of fun and memories first. Again, it's just getting people really excited, saying, hey, reunion will eventually be over, but there's when we're actually there, it's going to be pretty great. And we live that, of course. Someone actually asked the question to our account, am I crazy for coming from Thailand for reunion? And we're saying, of course it's not. We want you to do this. We appreciate your investment. Reunion is really great, and we need people from around the world to come. And this is just an example of what's called a retweet. I'm happy to go into it if anyone has any specific questions about it. But someone actually mentioned that I can't believe that tonight I'm going to be sleeping in my freshman year dorm. So we just kind of reposted that, if you will, to the rest of our followers on Twitter, which is, again, just those nostalgic points is what Twitter allows you, and social media allow you to talk about. And then this is our final kind of closing thing. We set records, we gave back, we reunited and did it all over again. Congrats to our class and a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you again in 5 years. So it's continuing to say there's more coming. You know, it's never ending. Same thing with social media, same thing with conversation. It's an ongoing social space. So lessons learned for me, the first is you can't do it without social. And again, part of that is, again, we in my class grew up with it in a lot of ways since college and beyond. But you really need a multifaceted strategy to drive people to reunion if you want. And also just to kind of take some risks is really important. Every year, every 5 years, something new is coming out. There's no harm in taking some risks and trying something new. Cross-posting is your friend. I already mentioned between Twitter, Facebook, email, websites, etc. Use as much as you can. We know it takes a lot of time, but it's worthwhile in my opinion. Scott mentioned this informal language and having fun with it is absolutely necessary. These are not press releases. These are not official documents. You need to really have a social, the way you would talk to your friends, so, without, profanities and that question. But, just definitely have some fun with it. You might think you're being heard, but you might not think you're being heard, but you are. I mean, a lot of posts I showed, and even Scott's, there wasn't a ton of likes, if you know what likes actually are. That doesn't mean people aren't listening to you or seeing it. They might just wait to comment later on. I still think it's worth the investment in doing social media, even if you don't see those metrics. That might mean a lot to some people. The word is still out as to what metrics you should be measuring and what you should be thinking about. So you have to kind of believe in what you're doing is worthwhile, even if it's sometimes hard to measure it. Leverage other sources of content. I went over that with the university. And then Scott and I are very open to obviously talk to you, but also feel free to just check our pages and others' accounts and pages for examples. By no means is any of it perfect or the textbook or anything, but I do think Scott and I did some pretty unique creative things, and people seem to react to it well based on 20 years difference as well. So I think that's a really important message to send. So I'll just close by thanking everyone for being here. I want to make sure everyone here enjoys CALC. We all know why we do this type of work, and I'm very grateful to be a volunteer for Cornell. And my reunion just reinforced that tenfold. So coming back to a place like this and to be able to share some information is I'm really grateful for it. You can email Scott and me anytime you want. You can also follow us on Twitter if you're on Twitter, and hopefully it's exciting. And then continue to tweet. But we're open for questions. I think we have about 15 minutes. So sorry again if I talk too much, but please.
Shane, I saw a couple different numbers up there. Could you specify exactly how many attendees you did have, and what was the record that you broke?
Sure. So, good question. The official number that we were given at reunion was we had 726 classmates and 760 total attendees, which broke the record for the most number of people ever in 50-year reunion at Cornell. So 5 year, from what I understand, that's the record we broke. We had the most number of both classmates and overall attendees, including spouses and partners.
What were those numbers before?
So for the number of classmates, it was 697, and we had 726. And I think it was 705 to 760 was the total attendees.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I can have someone else verify that if I'm wrong. So I was told
In our class.
the previous year's 06 reunion had the most number of classmate attendees.
Oh, that was classmates that we got.
Yeah, maybe overall it was 92 yet, so you know that. No.
When you were posting to Facebook, you said you had both a page as a group.
Yeah.
Were you doing posting to both?
Correct. Yeah, pretty much copy and paste. Same thing I posted to a page on Facebook. I just repurposed the exact same thing on the group because there were members on both. So we didn't want to miss out on anything. And both have different kind of technical features within them, so we kind of had to as well, in case someone wanted to share it in a different way and a lot of other technical.
And if you've just got a group, what's the rationale for having a page as well?
So page is more public, meaning it's kind of its own public brand and image, and anyone can jump in on this one. Also going to Scott's point, you can customize the URL, so it's really identifiable with you as a class, facebook.com/class of 2007 or Cornell 2007. That's easy to put on a website, on any sort of media, whereas the group is a really lengthy, ugly URL. So that's just like one really obvious one.
You can also track the analytics.
You can track the analytics on the page as well.
I am now added as administrator, and I can see when I post something, I can see that the traffic went up. So, I mean, I don't know if that you can do that with the group.
You can. That's a really good point. You can't.
And I can also see, like, when you invite people, how quickly they have said yes, and who they passed it to. I mean, there's
Yeah,
just a whole bunch
there are a
of
lot of
stuff.
metrics and analytics behind the Facebook page that you don't have with a group. So if you really do care about those metrics or what works, what posts were really
You get an update every
viral,
week.
you get an update.
And yeah, Facebook will give you an update. I'm administrator for several Facebook pages, so once a week you get, here's your weekly email, here's your weekly email pages and how you're doing, how many likes you have, and then if you open it up, you can dig into the information. So
Yeah.
you can actually be very analytical on that.
That makes sense? Is that okay?
Thank you.
Welcome.
I was just wondering, in terms of tagging people in pictures, what problems you've run into? Like, do you tag people, or do you let people tag themselves, or, you know, because some people get very...
Yeah.
We actually, this came up the last session about legal issues, about, you know, I mean, granted, when you sign up for a reunion, it says there'll be photographs taken, so, you know, legal restriction is not there. I have a personal policy, I never tag anybody. I think it's up to an individual to tag themselves if they want to be known. And that's a policy that I have when I take my own personal photos, because I don't want to embarrass somebody that's not.
So do you recommend people in your posts, like tag yourself?
Tag yourself,
or whatever?
Yeah, I've done that as well. I would agree, Scott. Don't try to tag 200 people in a photo, for example. But also generally, I think it's better to be hands off and let people. It also drives people there if they see themselves. Then they're going to want to tag, and then that shows up in their Facebook home page or their news feed, so their friends continue to see it. That's a solid.
And like when I put up the old photos from our class photos, I said tag yourself. So then it said so-and-so was tagged.
And then you have to
in.
find yourself. And
You have
it's
to
really
find
hard.
Find yourself first, yeah.
I think Andrew wants to add something.
Yeah, can I just add something? This is unusually important. I don't know if any of you followed the announcement Facebook made on Monday about their new graph search.
Yeah.
So it's basically a search engine that is not terrible now inside the Facebook ecosystem. So you can type in real language questions, and anything that anybody has done is going to pop up, including people who've been tagged by other people. So that dramatically expands the chance that somebody's going to discover that they've been tagged without having known they were tagged. And I think because of that, the policy of asking people to tag themselves makes even more sense.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, that.
As a follow-up to that, when you're tagged in somebody else's photo on a different page, it does send you a notification that you
Yes.
were tagged.
Correct.
You can untag.
You can untag yourself,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I've done also.
Yeah, privacy settings. We should have used this as ground rule almost. Privacy settings are up to individuals, pretty much on Facebook. You can have group settings, and that's where a group is a little bit more private. But if anyone is on Facebook, and this question came up, I know last year when we did a presentation, and it just always is with social media, check your privacy settings often, because they do change for Facebook, and everyone feels differently about privacy. So just make sure you're comfortable with it. I mean, do some Google searches if you don't know what it actually means. But I want to recommend that as someone who can manage this pages and also is comfortable with kind of being out there. I want to make sure everyone feels like they have the power to do it and to, you know, be private with what they want to be private with. So just a kind of general rule of thumb, I think, to respect everyone's own individual rights and preferences. I mean, it's good practice.
What do you do with people who like your page, who you don't know, have no affiliation with the class or anybody? Throw them out, or you just leave them in?
No, nothing.
Unless they, as an administrator, you have the option of, you know, if it's somebody that you know is going to be spamming the page,
Right.
to throw them out and block them from ever coming back.
We see people that we have no idea with. There's
Yeah.
no affiliation to Cornell, no affiliation to anything.
Right. I say, yeah, until they harm you, I don't see a need to really kick someone out.
But in a group, though,
A group you can.
A group, you can limit who
Correct.
comes in.
So if you're running a group, I should say this, you can keep it so it's pretty private, and you as an administrator have to approve someone joining it, and
Yes,
that's when you
we
can go
start-
to your class list or the alumni database and say, oh, I'll approve them because they're Cornellian.
My class started with a Yahoo group.
Yeah.
And I was one of the people who was assigned to approve or disapprove
Mhm.
coming in. And then we migrated it over to a Facebook group,
Right.
and now we don't even have a Facebook group. I think we just have a Facebook page.
Yeah, so the group allows that a little bit more, whereas a page, most likely you're pretty much just allowed to say I like it, because it's like a brand that you opt into. This gentleman.
Have you used Facebook in any creative ways that normally you wouldn't pick up something from Cornell, but something within the class?
Good question. One thing I actually am starting to do, and I don't know if this answers your question, is I'm going to start sharing class notes. At least just driving people to class notes, not necessarily individuals, because again, a little more of a privacy thing. But for a class that doesn't have high membership, and frankly as a class president now, that I care a little bit more about membership and dues paying than I may have when I wasn't. And I also see the nostalgia and the excitement at class notes that a lot of people don't see because they don't have the magazine. I want to start using Facebook and Twitter to push our class notes because I think they're great. I mean, I really
Actually,
do.
I check with the magazine first.
I will do that. But that's just one thing that's come to my mind very recently as I continue to read the magazine and realize most of my friends aren't reading it, but it's really cool stuff to learn about your class.
What I would actually do
you have
instead of that,
any
because I think the magazine would be a little hesitant, because they're hesitant about you posting your class notes even on your website when this came up, is because that's the selling part of the magazine.
Of course.
That's the number one read section. What you can do is point people to the
two red section.
What you can do is post people, say the magazine has just come out. Magazine is
Right.
available in digital download,
Yeah.
so you can actually send it that way. I think that's a unique way of getting
Yeah.
people excited about the magazine and say, hey, by the way, you can get a free copy if you're, well, a complimentary copy if you pay your class dues.
You can also use it as a, as a class correspondent, like I put up my email just to say, if you have
more,
news,
yeah.
please email to me. You can use it as a way to solicit news.
Or you might want to do, and this is brainstorming, this is what it's there for, is say, hey, in this month's class column, it said so-and-so did so-and-so, well, there's privacy issues, but you maybe get the permission to do it.
Right.
So-and-so married so-and-so, read more about other things going on in the class column and drive traffic.
Does anyone else have any good examples of how they've used their class Facebook page in creative ways? Yes, no? Seen it in other brands even that might be applicable?
I think if there's news that's out there,
Right.
that has been seen in the public domain about one of our classmates,
We put it
there's no
up
problem
there.
with reposting it,
We
like
put
with
it up there
that
and
thing about Dave Priceman.
We did that. And unfortunately, we also put, when a classmate passes away, we also make a notice on the Facebook. It's easier to do that. But we also actually wait a few days before we do that to make sure everyone who needed to know knows, and then we post it.
I mean, one example, which was actually happened on the heels of reunion, was one of our classmates was in the Olympics. And a lot of us kind of knew her when she was on campus, so we made sure we were keeping up with when she was supposed to be running. She was in track. So that was many posts in July of, in 5 minutes tune into.
That's a YouTube possibility too.
After it's exactly right, yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out as well.
Yeah,
as
you
we
didn't
wanted,
want to see it. You want to see how forward.
Yeah, but it's okay. At the end of the day, we wanted to make sure our classmates were supporting her in London. So that was one that was really unique. And I know there was a lot of media around her, a lot of interviews we took from other news sources and said, hey, read this about Morgan. For example, was her name. So that's just one.
And you can also use it like, Sandy, is everyone okay? Let us know if you're okay. Check in with us.
Yeah.
Well, I think you both have mentioned it, but I just want to make it, highlight it. It's not just for reunion. It's about building community, throughout the whole 5-year cycle. So we, put that we're going to be here at CALC. We just had our 20th reunion last spring, but hey, we're at CALC. We're still working for you. We're still getting excited. We just found one of our clerks. We took a picture with him. We're going to put that on our Facebook page. So keep driving.
On January 1st, I put up on behalf of your class council, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.
We're
just little
humans
things like
behind
that.
class
But
council.
honestly, as reunion chairs, like when you after a month after reunion, you're sort of like, I can't do anything more. I need a vacation. Yeah.
All right, because of the harsh sanction imposed on session managers, if we go over, I'm going to draw this to a close. We'd love to ask you to fill out your evaluations. There are paper versions on the seat, or if you're using the app, you can navigate to the listing for the session, and if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can do it via the app. Thank you so much for being here, and please join me in thanking Shane and Scott for another great presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy CALC and welcome to Boston for those of you who have.
Andrew, you were video.